Crossroads on the field. The summer sun had barely begun its descent, casting long golden shadows across the soccer field at the edge of Westbridge High School. Kayla sat on the grass, her back against the weathered bleachers, idly plucking the petals from a nearby wildflower. The game had started minutes ago, but she found her thoughts drifting far from the field. The loud cheers of the crowd around her blurred into a distant hum. This wasn't where she had planned to be tonight. Jeanette's party was the event of the weekend, the place where everyone from school would be. But here she was, at her best friend Melissa's soccer game, caught between obligation and a strange, gnawing sense that something important lay on this path. It hadn't been an easy choice. Kayla had been torn all week. Melissa, her childhood friend, had practically begged her to come to this match. She had a crush on one of the boys on the opposing team, and insisted Kayla's presence would give her moral support. Jeanette, on the other hand, had invited her to the party, promising a night of freedom and excitement, far away from the prying eyes of parents. For a teenager who often felt like she was always doing the right thing, the party had called to her like a siren song. But something held her back. "Hey, you're really zoning out," came Melissa's voice as she ran up during a break in the game. Her cheeks were flushed, both from exertion and nervous energy. Kayla smiled weakly, pushing her own complicated thoughts aside. "I'm here, aren't I?" Melissa grinned. "Thanks for coming, Kay. You know I'm not good at these things without backup." Kayla waved her off. "Of course. You're my best friend." As Melissa ran back onto the field, the ball already back in play, Kayla let out a soft sigh. She scanned the small group of spectators scattered around the field, half listening to the chatter about the game. It was a far cry from the raucous energy that would be filling Jeanette's house right now. But something in the air felt heavier, more meaningful. She couldn't shake the feeling that her being here was right, that it mattered in ways she couldn't fully understand yet. Then from across the field, her eyes met someone else's, a girl leaning casually against a tree, watching the game with an almost distracted air. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and she wore a dark hoodie despite the warmth of the day. There was nothing particularly striking about her at first glance, but the moment Kayla locked eyes with her, something shifted. It was as if the world quieted. The buzz of the game, the shouts from the crowd, all faded into the background. The girl gave a small, knowing smile, and Kayla's heart did an unexpected flip. For a few long seconds, they simply stared at one another, a wordless understanding passing between them. Then, as if pulled by an invisible string, Kayla found herself standing, her feet carrying her toward the girl, before she even fully realized what she was doing. The closer she got, the more she noticed the silver glint in the girl's hazel eyes, the way her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her hoodie, the quiet intensity that radiated from her like a secret just waiting to be shared. "Hey," Kayla said awkwardly as she approached, unsure of why she felt so compelled to start a conversation. "Hey," the girl responded, her voice calm, but there was an underlying warmth to it. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else but here." Kayla let out a short laugh. "You have no idea." The girl chuckled softly. "I get it. I'm Sienna, by the way. I'm new here." "Well, kind of." Kayla. "Not new, but always looking for a way out," she joked, before kicking at the dirt with her shoe. "I almost didn't come." "But you did," Sienna pointed out, her eyes locking onto Kayla's again with that same magnetic pull. "And maybe that matters." The simplicity of her words struck Kayla harder than she expected. It wasn't what Sienna said, exactly, but how she said it. Like she knew something Kayla didn't, like there was a hidden layer to everything happening today. They stood there in silence for a few moments, the distant roar of the game filling the air between them. Kayla realized she didn't even care who was winning. Something else was unfolding right here, right now, in the quiet space she shared with this girl she had just met. "So what brings you here? Not really a soccer fan, are you?" Kayla asked, trying to keep the conversation light despite the growing weight of their connection. Sienna shrugged. "I was just passing by. Thought I'd stop and watch for a bit. But now I'm glad I did." Kayla felt her face flush, and she looked away for a moment, trying to shake the sudden rush of feelings that surged up inside her. This wasn't just a random encounter. She could feel it in her bones. As the game continued, they stood side by side, exchanging quiet words, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Sienna wasn't like anyone Kayla had ever met before. Calm, confident in a quiet way, with a subtle kindness that drew Kayla in. The more they talked, the more Kayla found herself wanting to know everything about her. When the final whistle blew, signaling the end of the game, Kayla's stomach dropped. She didn't want this to end. She didn't want to walk away from whatever this was. "Are you heading somewhere?" Kayla asked, a note of hope creeping into her voice. Sienna smiled that same knowing smile. "No plans." "You? None that matter," Kayla said, surprising herself with how true that felt. "Walk with me?" Sienna asked, and Kayla nodded without hesitation. They left the field together, walking slowly along the quiet streets that led away from the school. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like they had known each other for years. With each step, Kayla felt her world shift just a little bit more, her usual boundaries blurring in the warmth of Sienna's presence. Hours passed like minutes. By the time they reached the park near Kayla's house, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a soft twilight glow around them. Kayla felt something inside her settle, a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she was missing. As they stood by the park's old wooden bench, Sienna turned to her, her gaze soft but intense. "You know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm really glad you came to that game." Kayla smiled, feeling a quiet certainty settle over her. "Me too." In that moment, Kayla knew that this was only the beginning. What had started as an ordinary day had transformed into something extraordinary. And though she couldn't yet see the full shape of the path ahead, she knew one thing for sure. Meeting Sienna had been no accident. Sometimes the most unexpected choices lead to the most beautiful destinations. The weeks that followed Kayla's chance encounter with Sienna seemed to blend into one long, sun-dappled dream. After that first walk, they began to see each other almost every day. It started with small things, grabbing coffee after school, sitting on the swings at the park talking about everything and nothing, or catching up near the soccer field where it had all begun. Their conversations deepened quickly, peeling back the layers of their lives, as they became each other's safe harbor in the otherwise chaotic world of high school. There was something effortless about being around Sienna, something that both thrilled and terrified Kayla. With every glance, every shared laugh, every comfortable silence, she felt herself growing more attached to this girl, who seemed to have come out of nowhere. She felt like she had known Sienna for years, as though they had been walking toward this connection their entire lives without realizing it. But beneath the surface, Kayla wrestled with an inner turmoil she hadn't anticipated. She found herself thinking about Sienna constantly, her thoughts always drifting back to her, her heart racing whenever she saw her walking down the school hallway. It wasn't just friendship, Kayla knew that much. These feelings were different. They were more intense, more complicated. She couldn't remember ever feeling this way about anyone before. One afternoon, As they sat by the lake near the park, Kayla decided to broach the topic that had been weighing on her mind. Sienna was skipping stones across the water, her face calm and serene. But Kayla could sense there was more going on beneath the surface, something unsaid hanging between them. "Sienna," Kayla began, her voice hesitant as she stared out at the rippling water. "Can I ask you something?" Sienna's hand paused midair, the stone she was about to throw resting in her palm. She glanced over at Kayla, her eyes soft. "Of course. You can ask me anything." Kayla took a deep breath, gathering the courage to voice what had been swirling around in her head for days. What is this between us? I mean, I've never felt like this with anyone before. And I'm not sure what it means, but I feel different." Sienna finished for her, her voice quiet but sure. She let the stone fall from her hand, and instead of looking out at the lake, she turned fully toward Kayla, her expression unreadable. Kayla nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, different." For a moment, Sienna just looked at her, those silver-flecked eyes searching her face as if trying to decide something. The silence stretched out, and Kayla's heart pounded in her chest, terrified of what Sienna might say, but even more afraid of never knowing the truth. Finally, Sienna spoke, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "I felt it too, Kayla. From the moment we met. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, because I didn't want to mess things up between us. But I can't pretend anymore." Kayla felt a surge of relief and fear all at once. "So what do we do about it?" Sienna smiled, a small, tentative smile that made Kayla's heart skip a beat. "I don't know. I've never really been in a situation like this before. But I do know that I want to figure it out with you." Kayla swallowed hard, her emotions swirling in a confusing mix of excitement, fear, and uncertainty. She had been grappling with her own identity for a while now, never quite fitting into the boxes she thought she was supposed to. She had dated boys before, but none of them had ever made her feel the way Sienna did. None of them had ever made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. I think I like you, Sienna," Kayla admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time she had said the words out loud, and it felt both terrifying and freeing all at once. More than just as a friend. Sienna's smile grew, and she reached out, gently taking Kayla's hand in hers. "I like you too, Kayla. A lot." They sat there in the quiet stillness of the park, holding hands, the weight of their unspoken feelings finally lifted. For the first time in weeks, Kayla felt like she could breathe again. The uncertainty was still there, but now it was coupled with a sense of excitement, like they were standing on the edge of something new, something important. From that day on, things shifted between them. They continued spending time together, but now there was a new layer to their relationship, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. They didn't rush anything, didn't label whatever it was they had, but they both knew it was more than just friendship. As the school year drew to a close and summer stretched out before them, Kayla and Sienna found themselves spending almost every waking moment together. They explored the city, taking long walks along the riverbank, sneaking into late-night movies, and lying under the stars talking about their hopes and dreams. It felt like the kind of summer people wrote about in books, a chapter of their lives that would be forever etched in Kayla's memory. But not everything was perfect. The closer they became, the more complicated things got. Kayla hadn't told anyone about Sienna. She wasn't ready to. Not because she was ashamed, but because she was scared of how the world would react. Her friends, her family, would they understand? Would they accept her for who she was? The pressure to keep their relationship a secret weighed heavily on Kayla. And it wasn't long before Sienna noticed. One evening, As they sat in Kayla's backyard under the soft glow of the porch lights, Sienna gently brought it up. "You've been quiet lately," Sienna said, her voice soft as she traced patterns in the grass. "Is everything okay?" Kayla hesitated, unsure how to put her feelings into words. She didn't want to hurt Sienna, but the fear of what would happen if people found out about them gnawed at her constantly. "It's just everything feels so perfect when we're together. But when I'm away from you, I start to worry," Kayla admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm scared of what people will say if they find out about us." Sienna looked at her with understanding in her eyes. "I get it. I really do. But Kayla, we can't live our lives worrying about what other people think. We have to do what makes us happy." Kayla nodded, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She knew Sienna was right, but the fear still lingered. "What if they don't accept us?" Kayla asked quietly, her voice barely audible. Sienna reached over and took Kayla's hand, squeezing it gently. "Then we'll deal with it together. We don't have to have all the answers right now. But I do know that I want to be with you, no matter what." Kayla smiled through her tears, grateful for Sienna's unwavering support. "I want that too." And so, they continued to navigate their relationship, slowly but surely, finding their way through the maze of uncertainty and fear. It wasn't always easy, but with each passing day, Kayla felt herself growing more confident, more comfortable in her own skin. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but with Sienna by her side, she was ready to face them. Their love story was just beginning, and as the sun set on that warm summer evening, Kayla knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, because sometimes the most beautiful paths are the ones you never expected to take.